Hey everyone, Selena for Who is Jesus Today. How's it going out there? I want to address today this a traumatic incident that occurred in Minneapolis at this school. I think I wanted to follow up on this. I intended to do it a little sooner, but that didn't happen, and so here I am now wanting to address it too before it becomes old, because sadly, as all of us human beings go on with our lives, and so many things occur sometimes, even like say in a sequence of events just keep reoccurring, that we lose a focus, we lose sight of what has happened, say a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So I think that too now is a time when, of course, schools are starting, and we want to pray for schools are starting different times, but usually the end of August up until the first week or so in September. We want to pray for kids returning to schools, staff, educators, their families and parents, and yes, there's a whole lot that can be really upgraded with the educational system in our society, and I would say to really emphasize in the United States. I worked in schools. I was working in schools at a time before 2020, and so things have changed a lot in schools, as a lot of us know, since 2020, and things have changed also not for the better, and a lot of the curriculum and the sentiments that they are pushing on our children and society, the vast majority of us are not for it. And I'm going to speak today, but I don't want to emphasize more on the gunman, a criminal, than the victims. But of course, I will address some issues regarding the gunman, because these are things that we have to pay attention to as they keep reoccurring in society, and sometimes from the same or similar populations. And so I will be speaking today, something that I don't do a lot on this channel, but I have from time to time as I'm led, on the issues of transgender and all that. Some of the I will be approaching it from the psyche of those who identify as transgender. Not saying that I have it all figured out, because I don't, and I have not had a whole lot. I've not had personal experience and contact a lot, but I have had some contact with people, and I have been in school with people who, even when I was in college, thinking back, there was a young man who was obviously a young man, but he would wear bright a rouge on his cheeks, huge earrings. He didn't change his short-cut hair, so nor did he put on feminine clothes. But obviously, he was struggling there with his agenda. I have been exposed to the community in the college where I attended, Uptown, New York, because although this was not my major, the school where I attended, the overall, say, how colleges specialize in certain type of subjects. It's a liberal arts college, but the specialty is dance. Not my major, but it's dance. And I took dance classes there. And so, I had to be exposed in that kind of environment, where you do tend to find people of the alternative lifestyles that are interested in the arts, and particularly performing arts and dance. So I know all about it, and I don't have the solutions to even why that is what it is. And that is not the topic today. But I will speak about transgenderism and where it is now in the United States, and that we have to be aware and on the lookout for, unfortunately, that these incidents can be repeated because of the derangement and the deception and delusion and disappointment of people in this community. But it isn't just people in the transgender community that are committing these tragedies and going into schools and shooting people. In fact, most of them probably weren't. Yes, in the history of this, in the Columbine shooting, yes, this wasn't really hardly a topic. The girl that was killed name is Rachel. There's a book out called Rachel's Tears. So it has nothing to do with this topic at all. But since this individual has this background, I will address it. But first, let's go back to this terrible, sad event that occurred in Minneapolis around 8:30 a.m. I wanted to get as much information as I could so I would not have misinformation here. 8:30 a.m. around that time, this gunman began to shoot in the windows of this school while the kids were praying. He knew what time to go, and obviously they often attack kids, but there's a reason for this too. He's looking for to hurt kids in the most vulnerable time and what would be the most advantageous for him, because they are praying and their mind is not on anything else that's going on outside, right? Okay? Because they're in a situation where they wouldn't be aware of their surroundings, not just the kids, but others as well. And so he's not inside of the school. From what I heard, if I got this information correct, he is shooting through the windows. Okay? It is really good to have bulletproof, say, windows, if you can, right? How do you safeguard schools better, or even, say, our houses out there? Do you have bulletproof windows around your house? You know, when you go into a store in a community and you can't hardly pay, because I've been in those places too, where they have all this bulletproof glass, and you have to kind of squeeze your hand under this little, say, lot there, or whatever, say, opening to pay. We don't live in a society where everything around us and our buildings is bulletproof. And so anyone at any time can be thrown off guard and can come to be a victim of such similar tragedies as people shooting through windows. So this young man, deceased now, had a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol. And I called him the right thing, a young man. In fact, there is some things that are said that he regrets even changing and wanted to go back to being a young man. That's also part of the conflict that is going on with him. So from what I hear, kids 8 and 10 were killed, shot and killed, those two, ages 8 and 10. They were sitting in the pews while praying, and 17 others were injured, and out of the 17, 14 are children. 2 were in critical condition, the last I heard. I'm not sure about that now. And the killer took his own life, which probably doesn't surprise us often in these scenarios. So that's the tragedy right there. 2 young lives were lost, kids planning, getting ready to go back to school, and before they can just fully get into the term again, here we go. Before school officially begins in a lot of the states in the U.S., we're hit with a school shooting, another deranged, sick person who decides to come to the most vulnerable population, children in schools, and this time while in prayer, while not conscientious of things that are around them, as well as adults. So let's begin a couple of things here. Let me speak, since I'm on the topic of schools. I have worked in schools. I have been, as teachers, educators, we're taught, we're trained, we know it's the kids' lives that we have to protect first. We protect our own, but we got to be able to protect our own to protect them, right? But we were always aware that at any time someone can come into the schools and try to get past the security and the office and all the things. I mean, I've seen some schools have better measures in place than others. I have seen schools have better safety measures in place than others. There's times I've been at a school, I've been concerned for my own safety as I'm sitting there working with a child, because I realize that I'm by a door that, if people aren't paying attention, someone can just walk through that door. And when you have people that are supposed to watch the playground, and they do, but then people start to talk and chat, it just doesn't take that long for a dangerous person to really sneak up on a playground. Because again, some schools have better safety measures in place than others. So to spare you of the details in my experiences with this, I can say that for the vast majority, and I have also done some subbing, so I've gone to different schools, that things can definitely change and be upgraded. And some are doing a better job at it than others, but there needs to be a real serious meeting at all of these schools. And these things have happened, but there's got to be some serious brainstorming and finding out better safety measures for children. I know for some of you will say, well, you need to arm the teachers, but things can go wrong with that. You can arm a teacher, they can try to take out of the dangerous person, and another child can get shot, or a few, in the crossfires. Because you got kids that will panic and be going in this direction and that direction. So how do you quickly get the kids out the way? Even if you have armed teachers, it requires training. It isn't the same as working out in the street, even as law enforcement and taking down criminals, because you got a lot of little bodies around who will become very frantic, and they won't have the same, say, rationalization as us older people. And how calm the teachers and the staff has to remain to keep these little people safe, who are not going to be able to reason these things out as we do. So there is no quick solution to this. There is no quick solution to keeping schools across the country safer. It's going to take minds that are willing to come together and spend hours at the round table discussing the pros and the cons. Because just like it can be a pro to have more armed people, staff in school, there are cons. There are also, friendly fire. There are other things that can happen, and then you have to see, was this really justifiable? Now we have a child that was accidentally hurt. Maybe what could the adult have done differently to prevent that? And this is going to take a lot of time and wear and tear. And so it isn't a quick solution. But we all If you work in schools out there, schools are starting. Much respect and love to educators and school staff, those who work to keep the schools clean and fresh, so kids don't get sick from germs. Those who are serving our children in the cafeteria every day, their meals, and yes, and those who are providing instruction, teachers, administrative and principals. And I don't agree with a lot of things that are happening in the schools right now. I can tell you, I have not agreed since the last couple of years. But at the same time, schools are open, kids are going back, and parents are sending them there, and we need to be alert, watchful, and prayerful, and supportive. And parents who know of the Lord, men and women of God, come together as one and collaborate and be able to address the issues that are happening in the schools and the curriculums that you find unacceptable and unsuitable. And that has been happening more and more because of the issues of transgender kids and a sexual identity and orientation. And so before I get into some of the final thoughts here of the gunman, I just wanted to first of all say, let's pray. This is sad, and we don't want to see this again as the year progresses. That now that there will be schools taking some serious measures, coming together and putting minds together to come up with some solutions. I don't think there's any really quick solution, though. But things could be done better. For the parents that are grieving for their kids being injured, and I think there is some good news that a lot of those injuries were not life-threatening. But still, the trauma of now going back to school. For the deceased children, their parents, what grief. We can only imagine, right? What grief. Unless you have actually experienced this. So, we need to pray for them. And that they will have the right support team around them. And so I'll keep this topic on schools, but because that's why I want to keep it on. But just to veer off here a little bit, people are getting killed as they assemble in prayer in different places. This doesn't happen a lot in the U.S. as it would in some of the more persecuted countries around the world. Pastors are arrested in underground churches. People are hurt and beaten by the police. This has happened in the underground church at times in China, other places too, probably maybe sometimes Iran. There's people having church in northern Nigeria, and the jihadists, the extremists, come in and have killed people while they're praying. So yes, there is that kind of a brutality in some people, that they would especially want to hurt you while you are in prayer. Especially at that time, they would want to do something like this. And I think that with this person, it's might be the same. And very specifically, he wanted to target the kids. Because I came across this online, and someone got a hold of things he said in his journal. So he really did. And we just have to be watchful and prayerful. And we're not going to all have bulletproof windows in our homes and our cars and our churches or schools. So I know people have a right to bear arms, but the irresponsibility of how people get them is like a problem that it seems like there's not even don't know where to even tackle it at times. There's supposed to be measures in place based on one's background, one's mental history, that they cannot get weapons. Okay? But of course that is not always the case at all. And I like to put a challenge out there to the entire country on this, though. People can buy their weapons when they are at that time in good mental health or decent mental health. But it doesn't mean things don't change in their mind. It doesn't mean that when a person purchased arms, that they were sound-minded then, with no intent to hurt someone. But as time went on, they could change. Because we live in a world where there is evil, there is darkness, there is demonic activity, and even sometimes the best of people can go off and wear off really terribly. So just because a person bought a weapon at the time and their sound mind doesn't mean they're sound a year or two later. People go through pain and tragedy and divorce, and all kinds of things happen in the psyche. Because on this platform, I don't shy back or shrink back from talking more about people with mental health issues and crises and how the human psyche works in general. And no, I'm not a trained and licensed psychiatrist, but I have done some counseling, and I've been around people with enough issues too out there in society, just in my work, and being involved with a customer service for a couple of years. You come to learn a lot about the human psyche. And as you know, I never deny that I am a very observant person. And at times, analytical, highly analytical. So I took out some time to analyze, which is what I intend to do, and I think that comes as well with the field of how I've been trained as an educator, and to work with populations with my a higher end of training with adolescents. So let's talk about adolescents. Let's talk about transgenderism a little bit here. And this is in Minneapolis. They say that it has one of the high rates of young people between the ages of 13 and 16 years old that are having a gender identity issues here. And so overall, 25.3% is the information I got from Fox 5. You may have come across it as well. The ages of 13 to 17, years old, is the highest population that is trying to decide if they are a boy or a girl. And I think, and that seems right. That seems about right, because just when you walk around and you see in the streets, you see how there is this, confusion. And also in the years of adolescence, in general, we were adolescents. You go through changes with identity in general, but I haven't seen, like, in this day and time, and I'm sure a lot of you out there who are adults like me, you're like, wow, this seems to be something that has just started to occur, just to say post 2020. In the last couple of years, more and more attention now to buying in to these types of feelings or struggles regarding gender identity. I believe a lot of times young people have those feelings, and it does pass. Yes, I always knew I was a girl, always wanted to be a girl. But I do understand there are some people that at this stage, especially in adolescence, may be trying to figure out not just about what's going on in the world, but trying to figure out who they are as a person. And I understand what that's like, but then trying to figure out now who you are regarding your agenda, when your agenda is clear. It's clear. The way you were born is exactly who you are. Okay? So, I want to say today a couple of things here, because I think that with the body of Christ, sometimes we have not known how do we really address some of this. And we want to be practical, above all spiritual. We want to call this out as wrong. We want to call out sin. And how do we address a community of people who are in need of spiritual and psychological help and support? At the same time, when you have children, you want to protect your children from this type of perversion. In the same way you would want to protect your kids from being hurt by anyone else, any other adult that has the wrong sexual intent. So there are quite a few variables here. And I say, well, as the body of Christ, I'm into this channel calling sin sin. Because, if you are a liar, a fornicator, homosexual, a heterosexual who commits adultery, fornication, and who is, say, doing terrible things to people, and you are, say, guilty of sodomizing, and you are a creepy stalker that looks to stalk girls or women out there in the street, you are clear about your gender identity, but the thing is, you are a threat to society. You're a threat a lot to women and girls, and so a threat is a threat, and that's if it's coming from the homosexual side as well as a heterosexual side. Any sexual perversion, we as Christians on this platform, and those who follow me, and those who believe in Christ worldwide, we do have a concern, and we need to, when it comes to people who are going to be a threat to us and to people that are in our lives and our kids and society. And all threats are something to pay attention to, but we're talking about a threat sexually. And so, and abuse. And these are very serious things. And these things happen in places where they should not. Like in education. It can happen in some churches. So it happens within the family. So something has to be addressed. And we want to make sure we never put these people and gunmen before the victims and the families. So the first thing was important was to acknowledge this tragedy and ways to avoid some of these things from happening again. And how it is urgent that schools and staff, administrators and teachers think more and more how to keep schools safer. But then we also know that sometimes even the curriculum today in schools aren't so safe. So there's a lot to address, and there's a lot to address regarding kids and education in schools. But let's now deal with what's been kind of exploding a lot in our schools across the country, and how it's been even pushed and advertised on our children and society. When they're at the time in their lives when they're confused about stuff, they don't need a responsible adults telling them to go on with those feelings, and that, okay, so if you don't feel like a girl, then you're not a girl. If you don't feel like a boy, you're not a boy. But that's not true. That's not true. Now, here's what is true. the feelings that they have, I don't say that they're not real feelings. But because you have a feeling doesn't mean it's a right feeling. It doesn't mean it's a true feeling. We have all kinds of feelings as we become more mature people in life, adults. We hope, but not always either. We have to be able to gauge and to sort out and to sort through these feelings and to know which ones, we have to really filter out more than others. Because you have a feeling doesn't mean it's a right feeling. You have a husband or a wife that you do love, but then you saw someone that you just get this flash of a feeling, you find them attractive and think, well, there might be a better person than the one I have, or a better experience than the person that I'm with. And so because you got the feeling, doesn't mean it's right? Yeah, there's a lot of times the feelings have to go away. So if you have a little girl in front of you and she's saying, I think I'm a boy, you cannot tell them that they are. That's not sound. You could talk about their feelings and try to figure out where these feelings are generating from. You also need to know, because sometimes, even the best of parents don't always know what's happening to their kids sexually. And you want to trust a family and friends and to a point, but no step parenting. You want to know if your child has come under any kind of sexual abuse, where being in the gender that they are in now is like uncomfortable or yucky. They're small and they don't feel good about maybe things that have happened to them, things they have seen that they shouldn't have seen and noticed. And so, there's some feelings that are stirring up, and the feelings that they have, there's valid reasons why these feelings are in them. But I don't believe that a small child really knows for sure, and even in their adolescence, that for the rest of their lives, they no longer want to be a girl or a boy. So the issue of gender treatment definitely is a failed mission when you have now science backing this up, that they can help this person change their gender. They cannot change their gender. They can floss over things and they can try to change the person's body dynamics, but just keep this in mind. Scientists out there, the other doctors, the types of medicines that they are prescribing and giving to these individuals. I want to express my opinion about what is happening with these types of treatment and the frustration and the tension that the recipients of these treatments, those who want to change their gender identity, what might be leading to some of this frustration, which even leads to this a person who did this crime to these kids in school and some of his last days on earth. What led up to his psyche being what it was. So I like to write out things at times and journal too. So I did a little bit of journaling. I'm not an expert on figuring out what's going on here with these individuals, and nor do I even have any knowledge about the kind of treatments that they're getting. But here's what I have to say. Gender treatment is a failed mission and ineffective. It will be that way because there's no successful way in science to change a man into a woman or a woman into a man. There's no successful way to make that change come about fully. Science is helping them to mimic what they're thinking and feeling, the clothes that they can choose to put on, how they can change their face with cosmetics, hairstyles, etc. It's a mimicking. And let's just speak more about some of the men that try to look like us women. So the traits and characteristics that are associated with the gender, it will never come out exactly the same. No matter how hard they try, you cannot change a man into a woman and a woman into a man. It's a patched up job a whole lot of times. The transgender person, if they are honest themselves, they are frustrated and can become increasingly frustrated with the inability to effectively and effortlessly transition into the new desired gender, which they come to know is not ever going to be really attainable. These frustrations are often taken out, it can be in some cases, on society for not participating with them in their gender confusion and delusions. They can become so unsettled with these feelings that it can lead to outbursts of hostilities, which we have seen. I've not come across it personally. Some of you have, but yes, it's out there. And even at times, violence, as we've seen with this person. And there was someone else that had also did some shootings with kids. So and yes, it's kind of been happening more consecutively with this population than it really has in the past, I would say, because overall in the history of kids being hurt in schools, well, it hasn't been the transgender community. I'm not saying that, because overall in the history it hasn't, but more recently with the heightened attention and awareness of the transgender community, we have been seeing some of these people, and I mean, they could have been involved with the school, and so they are going there to hurt the children. And if you notice in the last few incidents, it is about hurting the children. And I say there's something to pay very close attention to in that regard as well. So at times these unsettled feelings can lead to outbursts, anger, hostilities, as they say they were misgendered, and even violence. Many of them, but not all, are walking time bombs emotionally. It's a slow simmering pot about to boil over. Religious institutions often do come under attack due to most of our biblical beliefs, and there's times and maybe where they may also have a Christian and biblical background and say history that they are up against as well. So I just went through some things that I have actually noticed. I haven't come across any violent situations, but now this just really came back to me. When I was in New York one day in the train, there was a man that was trying to look like a woman, a young person, maybe looked like they were in their 20s, and he caught my eye. I looked at him, and the way he was actually walking, and he saw me really looking at him, and he looked at me, and he began to yell. I believe he also cursed me out. He cursed at me and just started taking off. And I believe that was the first time I ever had that kind of incident, because I looked at him and I gave him attention, and I was looking, of course, in disbelief of what he was doing, because he's clearly a guy, and he was just actually adding things on, like the makeup and things like that. And I've seen that from time to time. When I was back in New York, New York City is known to be a city that has had one of the highest rates of homosexuality in the country. And I know California, San Francisco, people say San Francisco, New York, but I think there's places now that may have bypassed, maybe even New York, maybe Portland, Seattle. Yeah. But from what I hear, here in Minneapolis, they are really in support and in pushing transgenderism. So I want to say this out there. You are going along and agreeing with this agenda delusion that will never be a full success for these individuals. And as a church, where are we with this? I like to say again, sin is sin. And all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Sins are carried out in different ways. This kind of situation is not very widespread, where people decide to get up and change their gender identity that they were born in. It is still a very small segment of our society, of our humanity. It is a minority population. We know that not everyone that is involved with homosexuality decides to go into changing their gender. So there are some differences there. You see, I want to say this too. Not everyone that is in this community walks around with a whole lot of heated up hostilities. But that is until you run into them, and maybe you will misgender them. And why is that happening? I could say to the transgender community is because the change is not convincing enough. It's just not convincing enough. And it won't be. The way you speak, your voice, to get enraged with people who are only identifying what they're seeing before their eyes. So it isn't convincing to people at large. Have I ever seen someone that was dressed like a woman, or maybe had gone through the changes and I couldn't tell? I think, here on social media I've seen some videos, and I have seen some models. And sometimes I've even said, oh, that's, no, she's nice looking. The hair is done and the makeup. And then I keep, looking and looking. And then I start to look at some of the bone structure. Because a woman's face and bone structure for a man, the jawline of a woman and a man is different. The hands are different. There's just things that are different. the feet, the way you walk, of the thighs. There's just, and so sometimes looking at the face, and with the hair done or hair added and other cosmetics and some other additions, right? I have not been able sometimes to tell at first. At first glance, I can't tell. But sometimes when I look, I am an observer. If I look more carefully, I start to see certain traits that I'm not even looking for those traits. But the longer I look at this person that I may even think is a woman when it's not, I just begin to look at them and I say, well, something's different. Something's different in the bone structure. And then if they start to talk and communicate, if they're saying, I start to realize, okay, this is not a woman. So what I want to say is that the change is not effective as you want it to be or think it is, and it is not the responsibility and the fault of society to only call out and identify who they actually see standing before them. Okay? I mean, that is not our responsibility, that the change is not effective. Not effective enough to be convincing. And are you convinced yourselves? Because a whole lot of times, what we try so hard to convince others of is because we're not convinced ourselves. And that hostility and the rage and those unsettled feelings, and when someone takes a second look at you and a third look and you get upset, is because, they're baffled some. They're trying to figure out, okay, maybe this person is going, is a man or a woman, and they're not even sure. And a lot of times, because we would like to know how to address, you want to call a man, a woman, a woman, but there are times when you're looking and you're trying to figure out if it's really either. And so with all of that on society, the fact that people are not seeing what you're trying to create and identify as. And the medical science, the practitioners that are making you feel like they're going to get you closer and closer to that goal of changing you entirely, where there is no trace that you were ever a man or a woman. It's not really happening. It's not really happening. Because we can see it as a society. If people have to look at you and even try to figure out who you are, a man or a woman, that is still saying that it isn't effective enough for someone to say, you look like you were born a woman and nothing else. I'll use myself for example. I know no one's going to ever try to figure out if I'm a woman. Yeah. I'm not a girl that wears a lot of slacks or jeans, but even if I did have on jeans and a sweatshirt, which is not, my fashion, okay, and no earrings and stuff, and that's true for all of us women. Some women may have more estrogen than others. Yes, that's true. And some may have a little more testosterone than others. But you know what? You can still tell a woman. So a women some are more girly and may come across highly feminine. But a woman is a woman. And a man is a man. And no matter if you have to take a second look, you will be able to quickly know that's a woman and that's a man. And when there is an over overcompensation and exaggeration with these individuals on how women look. Because we're not looking as extremely made up and fixed up as those in the transgender community. On average, women don't have time to put on that much, say, makeup and stuff. And so there's this overemphasizing and exaggeration. And see, what really gives away that this is not a woman, but a man that's trying to look like a woman. Well, I want to just throw this out there, okay, at you. It's because of the overemphasis, the exaggeration of how women look. When on average, women don't have time to do all of that. They get up in the morning, they got to get the kids off school, they got to go out to work. I mean, who can spend hours on trying to look like a woman? You are a woman. When you step out your door, you are a woman. Whether you step out with no makeup or some makeup, you are a woman. Dress or slacks, you are a woman. Different body types. We were made to bear children. There is a difference, clearly. And so with the overemphasizing and adding things, and that says a lot right there. That it is going to take a whole lot, if you are a man, to even come close to looking like a woman. And even in that, it is not effective. Because we've come to know the overemphasis that's placed on accessories and cosmetics, on things you can buy. It's just like an overload. And the average woman does not exist in society like that, because we are already who we are. And looking at this deceased person here who did this crime, he had gone through some changes. How does he look to you? Has a head full of hair. But that doesn't change the male bone structure in the face. A lot of times the shoulders haven't changed, or the voice, or the hands, or the neck shape, or the shape across the forehead. The forehead across a man and a woman is not the same. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, we're not the same. We're not the same. So, it's ineffective. You can never change a man to a woman into a man, and it will be so effective that no one can tell at all. No. Okay. This person planned their suicide. They were going through a lot. Did their family, loved ones help them by encouraging and allowing them to transition when they have come to a place in their lives that they no longer want to be like this? You see, like I say, sometimes when people are younger, they're not sure about who they are, their identity, and for a whole lot of us, it wasn't a gender crisis, but still, even when those young people are going through issues about agenda, they will grow out of some of these things too. And it looks like when this is a case here of a young man that wanted to kind of go back and regrets. This is what I came across. I quote, I can't live in this world. I hate this world. I want to die. I can't wait to die. So he had some regrets about transgender, about the change. He quote, these people. Oh, okay, no, that's not a quote. This is the quote. I am kids. Kill yourself. Kill kids. Okay, so he's got an issue with kids. Oftentimes, these people, their wounds, of course, are deep, and it originates in childhood. There could have been some pain experienced as a child that he didn't share with his parents. Something could be there that, as kids at times do, well, even adults, just keep it all inside. But I think with children, it's the fear of being judged and not liked or hated or yucky, or just things that when your innocence is taken from you like that. So at times these wounds go deep into childhood, and they hold on to this stuff for a long time. So it appears he wanted to be heard, and he got to be heard. And this is the psyche of just a lot of times these school shooters, is that there's some unsettled matters and then pain. There's things that has occurred in their childhood, though that is not the responsibility and the fault of their victims. Yes, it is not. And we should not ever veer in that direction. But we can learn from some of these repeated incidents that there is a pattern way of thinking and feeling, and how they go in with the intent after they hurt others to actually hurt themselves as well. That's their intent. That is also the intent, though, of full-grown people who are stalkers. And when one is stalking a person, they, it could be man or woman, but a lot of times men stalking a woman, well, they're on a mission to hurt their victim and to, say, finalize hurting them and getting rid of them, but they also intend to finalize getting rid of themselves as well. And we see the same scenario here with these school shooters, these incidents where they get rid of themselves and they don't allow other law enforcement to do it. They want to do it themselves. So, sick, emotionally sick, sin sick, in need of a Savior. I have come across someone in church who was once, he didn't have a change, but he used to do hair. He was a hairstylist, a beautician, and used to cross-dress. And some people would go to church, I believe, probably he ran into one of the saints that were Christian, and he was doing their hair, and he was told about Jesus and accepting Christ. And he got saved and was starting to come to church and attend church regularly and wear a suit. And I think I got to speak and talk to him a couple of times, and he would wear a suit and started to gradually look more like a man. The changes, though, even in the way they present themselves in expression, did not change like overnight. Sometimes, often, it doesn't. When a person's been thinking for so long and for years that they are something that they're not, or they are one thing, But there's something else, of course, like a man or a woman, vice versa. But they do start to develop the ability to mimic, to make the expressions, to have the body language of that other gender. And this is coming from their observation and then practice. But no matter about how they can take on the expressions and the way the desired gender walks and speaks, often you'll notice it's just over exaggerated, because women don't try that hard to be women, because we don't have to be. Okay? And so my case in point here is, to the transgender community, it's not very convincing, regardless of the treatments and the changes. Something is a giveaway. And then, we have, it's out now in the open, where a person would say they're transgender, or they had to change. So what you're telling society is that you were indeed born in the right agenda, but you decide you need to make a change. Because you would not have to be changing something if that's what you already were. Yeah, I mean, change is the key word here. You're making a change. And this change that you are making, you hope that it is effective enough, that it is convincing enough to believe that you are no different from a woman who was born as a woman. And it's just not true. Now, what you feel, you feel. But it's just not really nearly as convincing as sometimes you're told, as people that want to join you in this gender delusional identity and coach you along. But then you get to people like this individual too, who regret ever having done this, and they want to change back. The thing is, now they've come into an identity where you're not fully either, as far as maybe like appearance, and there's things that they have changed biologically in them. But when we face God, all of us come before God. We will come before God in the gender that we were born in. Which will always be who we are. As the church, let's just look to God with more understanding and wisdom on how to approach this community with the love of Christ, because they're not excluded from the gospel. They're not excluded from God's love. There are things that are going on inside of them. I like to say, too, that I will not support or justify the violence that is unleashed on this community. So we don't need hate crimes against any population in society, but it will happen. And I do know that at times it happens with this community, because they did manage to convince someone for long enough for them to be attracted to them, like a man being attracted to a man, but he thinks it's a woman, and they don't know off the bat. Right away they don't know, but they come to know. And there's been some tragedies. And people have gotten so out of it that they have been with a man and not a woman. Well, these people should be treated as criminals who are committing crimes and taking the lives of people in the transgender community. You're disappointed? Well, you're disappointed. Well, you made a decision to do what you were doing. And as Christians, we don't support this at all, right? But people in the world will do what they do, because I like to emphasize on this channel, I'm not here to make the ungodly godly. You become a godly in Christ Jesus through the blood of Jesus Christ, accepting him as your Lord and Savior. And we can trust God with the sanctification process. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Things don't change right away all the time, but whom the Son sets free is free indeed. You are now coming into a new relationship with Christ, and you are in the process, the journey of transformation. So we transition spiritually, and that transition does impact outwardly. And yes, so people will do what they do. And people will do different types of sin. So I'm like to say, you get disappointed and angry and so vexed that you think this person's life doesn't matter and you can take their life because you were tricked and set up. Well, it isn't justifiable in the rule of law, and anyone that takes a life should be charged for the crime, and that includes the crimes that are committed against transgender people. So I'm all about that. Okay? I'm not about what they're doing in the lifestyle, but just like my life and your lives out there should be protected by the law, and when there's crimes committed, say, against us, yeah, it should be handled. Well, the same for the transgender community. The crimes that have been committed against them and the homicides. And I think some of that I'm coming across has also been growing. Well, people need to be brought to justice. And these families of transgender people need to experience a justice for their loved ones, okay, who have been hurt because of who they are. Yes. So we as people of the gospel of Jesus Christ, on this platform, me as a presenter here, is that there is no one excluded from the love of God, from the gospel of Jesus Christ. You need a Savior. You're confused about who you are and how you were born. A whole lot of us don't have, say, gender confusion, but we may have been confused about some other things in life. But, you know, our solution is, our cure is Jesus Christ. For whatever we're not sure about ourselves, whatever wounds we have experienced and pain from a childhood and neglect and abuse, all of that, there is hope in Jesus. And so no group of people in society should be excluded from us as Christians presenting God's love to them in the gospel. And that is true for the transgender and the homosexual community. That's where I stand on this channel, a platform. At the same time, I'm open to discuss with people their pain and struggle about not knowing if they want to be a man or a woman. But I have to tell you the truth. You were born as who you are, a man or a woman. You may be struggling with that. You may want to get out of that body. And there are some real feelings that has caused you to come to this place. It's being generated from somewhere. I do not follow the persuasion that you were born not to want to be of the gender that you are. I do believe that very early in life, as early as even toddler age, that things can go wrong that can cause these individuals to have these off of feelings about their sexual identity. And even think that something is wrong with it, or it makes them feel bad, or if they weren't that particular gender, maybe these things would not have happened to them. So it's very deep, and I'm not going to dismiss people's confusion and pain, okay? But I want to say that any attempts to change who you are and your gender as you were born, it will not be successful as you think. It is not. And before God, you are going to be the person that you were born. As far as people making changes, I came across a man once. He changed and he could not change back. I think he said, I don't know how these things work. I don't know the science behind it. But obviously, seeing is believing. And we're not really seeing what they're telling us, right? And he had given his heart to Christ. And he wanted to go back to fully being a man. And he was trying. But he knew it was wrong. So, we need people to be helped and counseled before and after. Before and after. But here's what I am convinced. However we were born, as a boy or girl, that in God's record, on God's account, that's who we are, and we will face Him in the gender that we were born in. We have to stand before the final great judge. Okay? And even if you cannot reverse certain things, your soul can be saved. You can have life everlasting. And to the body of Christ, let's let God guide us more, and let's experience some unity here on how to pray and address these issues and struggles. Because sooner or later, your child, your son or daughter, is going to cross paths with individuals in schools who are having these struggles. Prepare them. Prepare them. Not to make fun of them and all that stuff, because, that's goes in the category of bullying. And I know, as a teacher, I'm not in schools now, but if I was to say, okay, so let me just be transparent with you, let me put myself out there. If I'm in a situation and there's a child that is having a gender identity, and maybe it's a boy now coming to school dressed like a girl. I haven't been in schools to experience that. That was not happening when I was there. Lots of things have changed since 2020. So here I am now, a Christian, a teacher, just say. And if I'm in that situation where kids are going to pick on and try to torture that child for being different like that, then as a teacher, I cannot condone the bullying. So the bullying has to stop. And this is why I've not been in schools now to handle this. So much Godspeed and respect and prayer is needed for you God-fearing teachers out there. Solid Christian teachers, that a responsibility is to have a bully-free zone. But you have a child that comes to school that is so distracting, and the things that they are wearing, when the kids clearly know what that child's gender is. Well, my advice is to make sure the child is safe. Make sure the child is safe. Report any incidents to the office, to the parents. And it's just a hard situation, because as a Christian, I don't want to say that's okay, because it's not okay. And I don't believe it's okay that a little boy is coming to school dressed like a girl. It is a great distraction. It is a lot of confusion for young kids, and rightly so. But at the same time, one thing I'm clear about is not to allow other kids to bully and to hurt that child. that's coming to school that way. I feel as a teacher of any background and belief system, that's just our job. That's just a job. But at the same time, you need some wisdom out there, teachers. And I know you have to hold on to your jobs, right? Because they're putting a lot of pressure. And school is starting now, so it's time I think I need to make this look like I'm talking in the title. I'm just saying this. I haven't even put together a title yet, to address some of the educators and to have a community to talk as Christians. How do you protect kids that are a part of this community, but at the same time, this is against your belief, your standards, and you do not want other kids to be impacted by this? So it's hard. It's hard. Where I could say, to begin, make sure the child isn't bullied or hurt or beaten up or something, because then you're going to have a problem as a teacher. But at the same time, some rules need to be set that that child should not try to influence and lure other students to think that a boy dressing like a girl is okay. Because it is not in the real world. It is not in the real world okay. And parents have a right to tell their boys that they are raising James, David, Paul. It is not okay to go to school looking like something that you're not, a girl, when you're a boy. Do not hurt that other student. Don't pick on them. But don't join them in what they believe. It's not okay. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It's not okay. It's not okay to bully and hurt and harass. But it's not okay to let yourself, let your children know, to be influenced by this either. And to this community, we have a right, as the heterosexual community, to protect our community, which is the dominant community, by the way, that we want our boys to be boys and our girls to be girls. Okay? We're not going to promote that. But like all of us, you are entitled to have safety measures in place to protect you as an individual, as a person, because all of our lives do matter. And I'll shut down there. I think, I don't know, I want some of you out there who are Christian, they're teachers, maybe some of my subscribers too, that these things are getting more and more challenging. But I know that this battle is spiritual, and God's love cuts through so many layers of stuff. And so you walk in God's love and power, and be a spirit-filled led a teacher. And God's going to help you and show you how to address some of these most complicated issues that you have to face today as educators in the school system in this country. Particularly because, like in some parts of the world, this is not that much of a thing. The way this is being pushed in the United States and in schools, this is not that much of a thing. In closing, can we be honest and say that this looks sometimes like a nation that has the form of godliness, but denying the power thereof? You say, God bless America. God help America. God help us all. But God, help us in this land, not just to be a Christian nation on paper, but seriously, some of these things are not even a thing like this in other parts of the world and countries. Not like this. It isn't the same kind of promotion. So I'll stop there, because I have to. I'm feeling drained now, but I feel in my heart it was worth it. And yeah, I have love in my heart for those who are suffering with gender identity. I pray that you will experience freedom in Jesus, and He will affirm to you, you were made to be just who you are. And He wants to use you as the man and as the woman that you were created to be. Okay. Let's keep these families in prayer. Keep your eyes open, educators, parents. School is starting fully soon, and we don't want to see any more of these tragedies. You can like and subscribe. Until next time, Shalom.